Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Thank you guys for joining me on this very special day where I'm going to be talking about past life attachments and development within the womb. So I don't have a presentation for you guys to follow along in terms of looking at like a chart or anything like that. But you can look at your chart and again use this information at a later date or whatever suits yourself. And I still think that it's very valuable information. So if you don't know your most recent past life, that's perfectly fine, because we're going to go through the motions within the chart, looking at specific points like the south node, the first house, and the 12th house, to get a little bit more information about that most recent past life. Now, if you do know your most recent past life, which is the one right before this one, and you want to look at your chart, see if this checks out for you, that would be amazing. As this information came to me, I do know my most recent past life. However, this information has only been tested with me. So I would like to hear if anybody else follows this along and sees that it checks out with that in which you experienced. So if you have your birth chart handy or your pencil to take notes, or you just watching, just following along, let's get started. So let's start with the ascendant, okay? So the ascendant shows kind of like our first breath. That's when the ascendant is kind of marked. That's what it's symbolized as in the birth chart. And any planets that you have in the first house is going to show what was kind of, or like below the ascendant, right? Anything below the ascendant is going to show the kind of the first half of the pregnancy, of your life within the womb, the development within the womb. And so if you do have a planet in the first house, it will show how kind of like what was on your conscious, right when you kind of, your soul descended into your mother's womb. Now, above the ascendant line, if you have any planets in the 12th house, it's going to show what kind of was going on right before your first breath. Okay, so keep up with me. So usually in astrology, we attribute the 12th house and the 12th house only to like what was going on during our mother's pregnancy. However, I basically received that that's just not the case. The whole birth chart can show more information about our life in the womb, specifically our soul's life in the womb. The 12th house, yes, can show our life in the womb, and I've heard different things of mothers having certain experiences and it showing within the 12th house of their offspring, as well as other houses as well. But specifically, I'm talking about the soul, because I do believe that the natal chart really shows, the evolution of the soul, like the spirit of the soul and whatnot. And so I feel like by assessing the entire chart as kind of like a journey through our development within the womb, or what we were really focused on, that's actually more of what I want to say. I don't want to say developed, I want to say focused on, because many lives ago, Jupiter had been developed, sun had been developed, moon had been developed. All of these things are already developed. So when we talk about like our sun sign specifically within this lifetime, right? So for example, I'm an Aquarius sun in this life. Does that mean that I was an Aquarius sun in my last life? No. So how would that, kind of contribute to this specific topic in this video? Okay. What I mean is that the sun in itself, right? Just the planetary spirit, the planetary consciousness of the sun was already developed eons ago. And it doesn't matter what house it's in. It doesn't matter what sign it's in, although that does matter. I just want to make it clear that in this video, even though I may use the word develop because that might be the only word that's coming to mind, just know that all of these planetary spirits were already developed. This video is simply to take another look at our life within the womb and how it contributes to our most recent incarnation, because if the only thing that really moves is the planets. The planets, Sun through Pluto, will always be there, and depending on what our most recent past life is, will make way for this one, and depending on this life will make way for the next one, and so forth and so forth. Okay, so let's start with the first house. Now, if you have any planets that are right below the ascendant, and I'm talking like 4 degrees, 5 degrees or less of an orb, that this like specifically applies to you. But even if you don't, this still applies. Just any planets in the first house. I would say that it's stronger if these planets are right below the ascendant. So the first house is how or why you were brought here. You were brought here to this specific incarnation. So whether it be like specifically where you were born, or specifically like, yeah, just like why you were brought here. So there's many different instances as to why people pass, is basically what I'm trying to say. So one instance, right? So it kind of it's kind of like your death in a way, like why you died. That's it kind of shows the energy of why you died, and thus kind of that transition, because I mean, hello, something had to end for you to begin here. And that's what the first house shows. And the first house is kind of like that first instant energy. You know how people say like in the movies or in media, like when people die, like sometimes they'll be like, am I dead? So they're like questioning, and like they're not sure, or they are sure, or whatever that energy is, like that will show in the first house. Okay, now as we move along the rest of the houses, we start to begin to see how these planetary spheres of consciousness play out, depending on what transpired in that past life. So for example, let's say you have Venus in the first house, and so a part of why you passed could have had something to do with beauty or luxury or resources of some sort. And let's say it makes an aspect to the moon, then it could have something to do with the family or something to do with the mother. So if you have Venus in the first house, and let's say it takes a while to get to the moon, let's say you have the moon in like the 5th house or the 6th house or the 7th house, and that might be how far the next planet is. So of course everybody's chart looks different. Keep up with me. Okay, so if you have Venus by itself in the first house, and then the next planet is the moon, like 5 houses down, what it tells me, or what was told to me, was that it means that for a long period within the development within the womb as a human, but even within the soul, Venus was the main what Venus was emphasized basically. So you could have been very just contemplating a lot about, let's say for example, and I'm going to get into this later, but let's say like South Node is in the 8th house and Venus is in the 1st house. This could be an example of someone who passed by way of surgery, by way of like cosmetic surgery or something like that. So as you pass, let's say you're just emphasizing the cosmetic, the cosmetic aspect of that and how you died by way of surgery and stuff like that. And that's something that it's really emphasized all the way up until the moon. And so let's say you passed and you had kids that you had left behind. And so now you're really kind of in this sphere of really like focusing on your kids and focusing on your family and maybe like, what you left behind, or your ancestors or something like that. And then you just want to do that for all of the houses. So if they're really far apart, then the planet before was really emphasized for a good part within development in the womb. It's not saying that you developed Venus, right? Venus was already there. It's just saying there was a lot of pondering on Venusian things, and you can look at your aspects to kind of understand a little bit more on that. Now, let's say the planets are really close together. So let's say you have Venus in the first and you have Moon in the second. Well, this means that, you didn't spend a lot of time kind of thinking about Venus. It went from Venus and then it went to the Moon, and it was kind of this gradual, regardless, it's gradual, but it was kind of this very kind of, I don't know the word that I'm looking for, but it just happened as it was supposed to. I mean, regardless, I can't find a word for that, okay? But if the planets are really close together, then the planet before was just not as emphasized. That's pretty much, the only thing that I can really say about that. All right, so now let's go into the 12th house. So a lot of 12th housers, or what makes a 12th houser, or what makes any house, right, is when you have like a cluster, you have a stellium within that house. So if you have a stellium within the 12th house, then that means that this had already been developed. And so it like wasn't focused on. And what I mean by developed is your sense of self was already, okay, right? It was fine. If your sun's there, if your moon's there, your emotions, your feelings, things like that, your relationship to your mother, etc., was already established. That was something, it probably didn't have much to do with that most recent incarnation. Those planets in the 12th house kind of show what you're already comfortable with, what you're already familiar with, and it's kind of the stepping stone for like who you are. So it's really interesting because a lot of times when I see information about the 12th house, it's kind of like, especially like sun in the 12th house, it's, oh, they don't know themselves, all this stuff. But actually what I've noticed is the 12th house suns really do know themselves. It's just that there's a lot of outside influence that tries to tell 12th house suns how to be, because 12th house suns are already comfortable with themselves. And in a society that doesn't really acknowledge 12th house mysticism in general, the 12th houser then gets told that they're insert name here, and of course depending on what sign you have there and stuff. So that really just depends, but that's just what I've noticed. And of course, if you have a stellium in the first house, then like I said, yeah, though all those planets, all of those energy signatures were prominent as you came into your mother's womb. All right, so the south node is what you brought in from the past life, the essence of what you brought in. So actually, so the south node, like you could have brought in, for example, like I said, maybe you have like south node in the 8th house. You might be like scared of surgery. You might be scared of needles. You might be scared of, things of that nature. Like that's kind of what you brought in. It doesn't always have to be that you're scared of it. I'm just using that as an example, that it really, held an effect in this personal life, because that's how, you pass. There's a movie, I forgot what it's called. I don't remember, but it has something to do with a model and her eyes, and like has to do with past lives and twin flames and star-crossed lovers and things of that nature. And so, spoiler alert, her recent incarnation, she actually passed on an elevator. And then she reincarnated. Well, so her past reincarnation, she died in an elevator. And then her recent incarnation, she was deathly afraid of elevators. So that would show like the south node, okay? Like her dying in an elevator, which would probably have something to do with maybe the 10th house, maybe the 11th or the 12th, because it has to do with heights, okay? And then as far as like what she brought in, right? So it had to do with like I forgot exactly how she passed. It wasn't like she got stuck in the elevator or anything. I think she needed an inhaler, or I'm not entirely sure, but let's say that she died in the elevator because she needed an inhaler, and they were really close to getting her inhaler. Like, they were in the building of her home and everything like that, but she couldn't get it. So that could have something to do with like moon. You could see like moon in the first house, inhaler. You could probably see like Virgo there, maybe even Taurus, because Taurus has to do with the mouth. So like I said, this video, although it is open to anyone who knows or doesn't know their past life, that is why I'm, calling out to those who do remember, so that, you can see if this checks out, because it does check out for my most recent past life. So I do just want to put that out there. So just to talk a little bit about my recent past life. So in my chart, I have Mars in the first house, and it's conjunct my South Node. And I have Mars square Pluto, and also Pluto makes an aspect to Uranus and Mercury. Now, my Mars makes other aspects as well, but just for the sake of this video and to keep it, kind of short, and I don't want to explain, my entire past life. And again, aspects matter too, right? I wasn't brought here from my own will. I was basically like forced to reincarnate, and it was sprung up to me like very quickly, which is like Uranus. Uranus is like flashes of insight, and it reminds me of the Tower card in Tarot, like unexpected changes and stuff like that. And then Mercury, of course, communication. So I was told that I would be coming into this life, and it was, like I said, it was not my own will, and it had to do with authority. It had something to do with someone who was exerting control, which Pluto has to deal with control and power and the underworld and things of that nature. So, like I said, I don't want to get too deep into like my most recent life. My previous life. But the only reason why I bring it up is just because I want to say that it does check out in my chart. And so even if you, like I said, don't remember the details of your last life, you can at least piece the puzzle together and see if like it checks out for you, see if it resonates for you. Because I really think that this can help us to really work towards our North Node as well, is by checking out the details of our past life, and why we were brought in, or not why, sorry, what we brought in from that past life. That can really definitely help us. And not just from the sake of, because a lot of the times, when I see the South Node in astrology, it's always like, oh, like, for example, I have Pisces South Node. So it's always, oh, I brought in healing abilities and like, insert characteristic about Pisces here. But I think we can really get deep into really what was brought in from the past life, like, because things do seep into this life, and I think that it's important to recognize that. I think it's important to take charge of the way that our development within this life is, and also knowing that sometimes it's not necessarily about development. Yes, it is about like vibrating higher and understanding and knowing, right? But also recognizing that everybody's not at the same, I don't want to say the same level, but the same understanding, and like that's okay, because the planets move, and the spheres of our consciousness change according to that in which it needs to happen in. So that's all that I have for the video today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.